you. Good evening, folks. Calling the meeting to order, and of course, as always, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and also to those from other communities who are here with us today, maybe by the stream, for they held the memories, the tradition, and the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 is our apologies and also requests for leave of absence. No apologies tonight, but revised dates for my leave. As of tomorrow morning, I'll be on a plane about 6 a.m. and Councillor Simpfendorfer becomes the acting mayor through until the 30th of this month. Don't miss me too much. And Councillor Hall, I believe you've got some leave dates?
Yes, I'm on leave from the 24th, which is Sunday of April, to the 2nd of May. So, yeah, I booked this some weeks ago, so it's not something that's come up quickly, but it was after the last council meeting, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. There will be no complaints there, I'm certain. Declarations at item 4 under the Acts, Regulations, Codes and Local Laws. Acting CEO, there are none. Declarations by councillors of any conflict of interest. This evening you'll lose me at 8.10. My conflict is general in nature that relates to my employment. I'll explain some more before item 8.10, and I believe Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a conflict at 8.8 and 8.4.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mildren. Item 6, the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. There is a recommendation there. Council, someone happy to move that they are correct? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simpfendorfer. Assuming no one will speak against. Thank you. Carried. Item 7, there's no delegates' reports. On to our items 8. Reports for determination, councillors. We start at item 8.1, the March 2022 quarterly finance report recommendation. I've got there beginning quite early in that report. Would somebody like to move a motion? Councillor Quilty, as per recommendation. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you for the Department of Finance for preparing this report. We are looking, as we do every quarter, at our quarterly financial report and forecast for the year as is seen from the third quarter as of 31st of March 2022. Overall, in this report, we will see a small reduction in deficit from 3.7 million as seen in previous quarter to, in the second quarter to 3.4 million still deficit, which is seen for the year as of the 31st of March. A few highlights in the reports and variations are the increase of capital revenue by 7 million, which consists of 3 million proposed sale of land at Logic and a couple of grants for the works we are planning to do at Logic, which is 2 million for Roach Drive extension and 1.46 million for the detention basin project. Those expenses, Logic expenses, will naturally be offset by the cost of the works planned to perform. The Roach Drive extension 1.9 million and the detention basin 3.1 million. Another big change in our capital expenditure that we planned will be the removal of 6.45 million out of this budget and moving it to 22-23 budget for the purchase of the depot. The report we are looking at also, other than the quarterly report and variation, also includes the monthly report for March with a few variances, and there is a good, for those who will read to the end, a valuable breakdown for March quarterly budget variation for capital, where all the proposed variations are broken down by unit by project number, and the revenue expenses items are broken up by business unit number. So several pages of numbers. And we have, I'm not sure whether we're going to do this now or at the question time, but I would propose that we do it now. I would like, as usual, to thank everyone, all the ratepayers who read these reports and who send us questions, and in particular to thank Mike Fraser, who has sent us a few questions, and Officer Klein has extensively answered these questions. May I use this time now, because I think it's most appropriate now to answer these questions, or shall we do that at the question time?
Yeah, look, Councillor Quilty, I think tuning into debate time with that quite substantive list of questions, I think we can probably include them in a question and answer response on our website. Yeah, definitely, and in direct response to Mike Fraser. So happy for you. I didn't start my stopwatch, so I'm not too sure we have to with your time, but if we continue the debate rather than going to the questions, that'd be great.
Yes, okay, I'm fine with that, and I'm sure Mike will contact us again if any of the questions are still not answered substantially, in his opinion. Other than that, I propose to vote as per recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Hall, as seconder.
No, I have nothing to add to that. No, thank you.
Councillors? Anything in closing, Councillor Quilty? No? I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.2 is the 2022-2023 rating differentials. Now, before I ask through you, Acting CEO, Director Klein, to do her best in giving us a summary on how we've got to this situation. It is a late report that perhaps the community haven't had a chance to read yet, but I guess during our budget process, which has been tracking along very nicely to date, and I know all councillors are happy with how that's progressing. Narelle, I want to give you a couple of moments to introduce this report, because I know it's a difficult one to explain, and if anyone can do it in this room, it's probably hopefully you.
I'll give it a try. So Wodonga Council adopted its Wodonga Revenue and Rating Plan 2021 to 2022 to 2024-25 at the June 21 Council meeting, and it was based on the previous Wodonga Rating Strategy 2019, which was developed following a comprehensive deliberative engagement process with representatives of the Wodonga community. It uses rating differentials to apportion the rates burden in a fair and equitable manner across 10 different categories of ratepayers in the Wodonga municipality. It takes into account that farming, industrial and commercial properties are able to claim their rates as a tax deduction, while residential ratepayers pay from their after-tax income. It also recognises high capital values of farmland do not always result in a consistent income as a proportion of the property value. The recent substantial rise in regional property values are reflected in the latest revaluation conducted by the Victorian Valuer General's Office for use in calculating the 2022-2023 rates distribution. This revaluation has seen a rise in commercial and industrial property values of around 15%, whilst residential and farming property values have seen a considerably higher increase of 25 to 35%. Without adjusting the proportion of rates each rate differential contributes, this would result in an unintended and substantial increase in rates for residential and farming ratepayers, just as a result of the revaluation itself. The recommendation in this paper seeks to correct this anomaly by making the share of rates between each rates differential, as reflected in the 2022-2023 average rate, being as close as possible to the average rates in the 2021-22 year. It does not seek to make any other changes that would alter the intention of the Revenue and Rating Plan and its predecessor, the Wodonga Rating Strategy.
Thanks, Narelle, and I'm sure councillors may have some questions at some point in time, but I'm happy to take someone to give us a motion first. So did you want to move as per recommendation, Councillor Quilty?
Probably not, but I have a question first. Thank you. Thank you very much for this report and for modeling this alternative outcome for us. And thank you for taking some of our questions and concerns during the briefings on board, in particular the substantial increase that we were facing prior in rural farming land. My question is that I know that we want to have this settled before our draft budget goes out to the public. However, and I recognize that this report has been given to us a little bit later and it looks a bit different to what we saw in the briefing. It is a good increase, it is a good improvement, but I was going to suggest an alternative, and I don't know if we have the time in between now and May when we have to put out the I'm not sure how to do that, but this arrived late and I'm not 100% happy with it. So is there any way for us to go about it, to have another quick play with the rate differentials before we, what's that?
Thanks. Councillor Quilty, I think I understand the question. Director Klein, I'm pretty certain I know what the answer to this might be, but it's around timelines, and I know how you have to model this and keep all the parameters in mind, and I know that's sort of why it's come to us at this point in time, to make sure that we're mindful, given that the results only just come through in the recent couple of weeks from the valuations. But can you explain a bit more around the timelines and the, I guess, the importance?
So the importance of this report coming up to this meeting for approval is that I'm going away from the content of an adopted plan of council that spells out what those proportions are in that rating plan. When you look at the report, under discussion section in the report, it sets out a table. The very first table shows you the total of property values against the various different rating differentials, and you can see that residential occupied is the largest proportion of the values of properties, and it takes up the lion's share of rate revenue that's collected. So a small change against, say, commercial occupied, for example, the amount of rate or the property values for commercial occupied are about 10% or thereabouts of the property values of residential. So a change in that makes a very small change in the residential property values. So keeping in mind that I've got my total rates in the budget, the differentials don't mean I raise more rates. It just means what rate payers pay which portion of that total. So it's quite complicated calculation to split it up. And I think we've probably worked it as tight as we can to get something that reflects that adopted policy that we already have in place.
Thank you, Narelle. So timeline in terms of adopting into the budget, I guess the time question is we're probably on the limit at the moment.
Yeah, so the draft budget will be coming up to the May meeting. So it doesn't affect the content of the budget dollar-wise, but it impacts the words in the document, sets out the rate in the dollar. So I need to know what this is to calculate the rate in the dollar to put in the draft budget, and that needs to come up to councillors in time for the council meeting.
Thanks, Director Klein. Do I have a motion? Councillor Watson.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to put forward the rating differentials on the late paper on page, I think it is page 1, the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, moving as per the recommendation. Councillor Hall is the seconder. Councillor Watson.
Mr Mayor, I think it's been explained by our officer tonight, and happy to put it forward for debate.
Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Yes, I was on the last council rating strategy, so I feel like I've got a little bit of an idea. I'm not a know-all on it, but I've got a little bit of an idea. And I think, I believe that the councillors and staff have been very on the ball with this rating differentials. I think we've, as Officer Klein had said, that we're very aware of the fact that there's been a 26% increase on average across residential properties, but rises across the whole board. If we didn't adjust the rates, there'd be a bit of an outcry, I think, going forward. And I think they've been done very fairly. It's a little bit complex, and each rating category, which we've got 10 of, you know, when we're doing the strategy, we really go through how that would, each change would impact those different categories. And so it's, you know, it's done to be fair and equitable. I think we've done a pretty good job, and as I said, we've been really mindful that we get the best outcome. And I think at the end of the day, I do believe the community will be happy with the outcome. The tables in this report are very explanatory, even for people that maybe wouldn't understand it. You can calculate your own rates to a degree until we bring out the budget. But no, I think we've done a good job there, and I support it going forward. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The bottom line of this is to ensure that we start with the budget deliberations and the budget preparation at as close as practically possible to the equivalence of previous distribution of rates. Now, what that means is that we don't see massive increases in people's rates simply because the valuations have changed, and the differential between residential valuations and the commercial and industrial and other properties create high increases in residential rates and resultant decreases, which is what would happen if we weren't prepared to make these changes now. There would be resultant decreases in commercial and industrial rates and quite significant numbers in reduction. And this is a very, very responsible outcome to go and do this way from our starting point. It makes a fair starting point. Now, there may well be rate increases as a consequence of the deliberations of the budget and the process that we go through with the budget. We recognise that there's a cap put on that by the state government, and we can't go above that cap. But between essentially now and the next council meeting, the budget documentation will be finalised and prepared to the extent that it's put out in exhibition, and it will reflect the fact that we're starting from this equity point that reflects what's happened in the past and starts from a level playing field rather than the slanted field that we would be in, and the massive impact that we could expect in relation to some residential properties as a direct consequence of that difference, the differential. So this is something that come up in the briefing processes in the preparation of the budget, and it was absolutely highlighted when we received the valuation information, which was, I think, about 10 days ago from memory. And that's why this has been acted on very quickly. And I congratulate the staff and the work that's been done in putting this modelling together. I understand how really difficult it is to actually work this to make it come back to an equitable starting point, because you change one figure and it changes everything else. So there's a lot of work that you have to do to make sure that balance happens. And I think the officers have done a very good job. It may not be perfect, but very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillors? Councillor Simpfendorf, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Quilty.
Just really quickly, I think for someone not as educated in the finance world as one would like, again, echo some of those comments. Congratulations through you, Mr. Mayor, and Acting CEO to Narelle and your team getting this together, running the different variations for us so we got our heads around what was coming up to us tonight. So I really encourage any of the community out there that want to get their head around this and how the differentials work to read the report. It's quite simple and put forward in a way that those of us less educated in finance can understand and wrap our heads around it. So it's a great outcome for what is fair and equitable across our community. So thank you. Nothing to add to the debate, sorry, just comment.
Thank you, Councillor Senfendorfer. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for your debate. I am not planning to disagree with the opinion of the other councillors, and I would like once again to thank the staff for doing all the recalculations, taking our concerns on board and presenting us with a different model, which does look a lot more equitable than where we would have been if the staff hadn't fiddled with the proportions. As I said, I am going to support it, but there are a few things that I would have preferred to see. And one of my chief concerns is an increase in industrial occupied rate, which is $310 on average. I believe while it is very good that our residential properties and rural farming properties didn't incur much of an increase on average, and commercial properties only a small, comparatively to the previous model, small increase on average. I would like to see industrial occupied properties not to carry any increase on average. I know it's a keen interest of mine, this rate differentials. I find it a fascinating topic, and I know how difficult it is to fiddle with these figures. However, my personal wish is that businesses didn't carry the increase in the rates, that we could also allow for industrial occupied lands not to carry much of an increase, and if this potential decrease could be absorbed by vacant lands and by development used land, that would be my perfect model for rate differential for this year. However, I'm going to support the model in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Watson in closing.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think there's been plenty said. This is a great start to our formal budget, which will be occurring next month when we'll do some more discussion on it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's put the motion forward.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Therefore, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.3 is our Instruments of Delegation. Councillors, there is a recommendation there. We are revisiting these as per our last recommendation or resolution of Council some time ago, depending on which agenda you're following the copy of will depend on the page number. But Acting CEO, I do know that you wanted to speak to a late addition to the sub-delegation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, you would have received an addition to the instrument of sub-delegation by the CEO S7, and it is around, we've added an additional delegate to the Public Interest Disclosure Act section, and this is to add the Manager of People and Workplace as a delegate. At the moment, there was just myself, and I'm unable to have that delegation while I'm in the acting CEO position, and so we need another additional delegate. She was registered through IBAC as the deputy delegate for council. It just wasn't updated on this instrument of sub-delegation. So it means nothing other than there is another person who is delegated to be able to follow through if there's a public interest disclosure.
So in terms of the wording that was in the original recommendation, sorry, Acting CEO, is the wording still relevant?
The wording's still relevant.
Yes, so the S7, that's table will incorporate that change.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Council's looking for a motion. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Surprise, surprise, I have nothing new to say about what I think about the instrument of delegations we are operating with. I would like to propose...
Sorry, Councillor Quilty. Motion, please, and then we can talk to it.
Okay.
So long as you got a seconder.
Thank you. delegation stages. My motion, Committee of the Whole Council is established to review the delegation by councils to the CEO, so the particular instrument of delegation which deals with delegations by council to the CEO, and to report back to council with the recommended changes within 6 months. Until then, the current instrument of delegation stays in place.
I'm going to, before I seek a seconder for that acting CEO, is there any legislative concern around that motion?
To adopt this and then add an additional recommendation that this stays in force until such time as this takes place.
Okay, so having had that advice, councillors, do we have a seconder for that motion as outlined by Councillor Quilty, or do we want to go back to the drawing board on that one?
So, Councillor Coulter, in addition to the recommendation, is that right?
Yes, so that can be 0.5.
Yep.
About a committee, didn't quite get the words, Councillor Coulty, to have a look at just the delegations to the CEO. Yes. Just that one, and to come back within 6 months. Yes. So that could be 0.5.
Sorry, and that it is done by an established committee of all councils, similar to what we're doing.
Committee, yeah.
Yes. Not just a briefing workshop.
But so, sorry, just to, for those playing along at home, because there hasn't been a microphone in front of everybody at any point in time, at some point in time, I should say, I think Councillor Quilty, if my memory serves me correct, had words of the effect of the existing delegations stay in place. Did I hear that correctly? Because what you're suggesting, acting CEO, is we need to accept the recommendation now with an additional point of a committee of whole council revisits the delegations within 6 months.
To the CEO.
To the CEO.
Yeah, within 6 months, and then a report to come back to council. Yes.
So are you happy to have that as the motion, Councillor Quilty? Yes. To still move as that? Is there a seconder on that?
I'll second it.
Councillor Hall. Okay, test the floor. Councillor Quilty, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Acting CEO. The reason why I would like us to review the delegations is because I think the current instrument of delegations leaves very little responsibility in the hands of the elected representatives and puts a big burden or privilege of responsibility on the CEO. I have spoken multiple times on the issues I have with the instrument of delegations. I believe that the current situation exacerbates my concerns because we are looking for a new CEO. And I believe this is the slightly volatile time with a new person potentially starting in a few months once we find the person who wants to start. And particularly in these times, councillors need to step in and take on more responsibilities in the affairs of their city. And because the delegations is a huge document, pages and pages and pages. We need to sit down and responsibly review them and make sure that we understand what we are not delegating and what we are delegating, and assume a number of responsibilities as councillors and elected representatives. So that's my reasoning behind my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Hall, the seconder.
I'll reserve my comments for later.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Mildren, question, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Why are we limiting it to the delegations to the CEO? Why are we not reviewing all delegations?
As I understand, this instrument council delegates to the CEO and CEO sub-delegates to staff. Hence, I think a good starting point is to review what council delegates to the CEO.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Mildred? Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Watson?
Mr. Mayor, I might have a question too. Is that the process, if should we adopt that council laws have more delegation and acting, the slowing down of business in our city might be slower because we'd have to come back to a full council or some committee meeting, and I imagine we'd want all 7 councillors there with that delegation. So I think it would slow business down in our city and where we've got in our city, Mr. Mayor.
That was debate, not question, I think, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mildred?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My history on delegations is probably very well known, and frankly, I think we're way over delegated, and I have a quite different opinion to that of Councillor Watson in relation to slowing down process. We shouldn't be taking delegations away from staff that deal with ordinary routine operational things. That should be written into stone, and basically it almost is with current legislation the way it is. But strategic issues like decisions about Junction Place, strategic issues like planning scheme amendments, big community of interest issues like some of the higher end planning decisions that get made through the planning approvals processes should be coming back to council, in my opinion, because that's why we're here. That's what we've been put into the role for by the community, is to represent the community in those big decisions. I'll repeat it again, we should not be getting involved in rats and mice operational matters, and those sort of delegations should go as low into the organisation as possible to keep these things moving as quickly as possible with as little red tape as we can possibly put in place. And I see an opportunity. I probably would have preferred the opportunity to be wider than just the CEO's delegations, but I see an opportunity for us to make some significant changes that will be for the better and will improve the way we do business, will improve the way that the council functions and operates, will improve the knowledge base of councillors in terms of how things function within the city. So probably some might see this as contrary, because I haven't supported delegations too often in the past, but I think I will support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildred. Councillor Simpfendorfer, did you want to enter the debate? Or no? So Councillor Councillor Hall, reserved right.
Yeah, look, I've been, my view on this has been made clearly many times. I have written that I support the need for a workshop, but as Councillor Quilty has put forward, a committee would probably be better because it gives able to make decisions with the committee. To discuss our council delegations going forward, I often said that as a councillor, what we delegate is one of the most important duties we have as a councillor. Delegation should be done with a good knowledge and understanding of what is being delegated. I'd sometimes, because it's such a big document and some of it's quite complex in, well, you know, for a new councillor especially, but even for myself going forward, it's can be quite a, you know, a big thing to get your head around, a big document to get your head around. So I think it's really important that, you know, we do have a workshop committee that does go through this, especially when a new councillor coming on board, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And also, you know, we will be hopefully employing a new CEO. So I don't think it's about bogging down council with decisions that could be delegated to our CEO or staff, because we're only looking at what Councillor Mildred has said, those big strategic issues or planning decisions that, and other things that, that should come back to council. And I think our community expects us to be representative in that way. So, yeah, I think they have an expectation that we are on, you know, making those decisions. So, yes, I support the motion put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson, is it a question? Because debate's just about to wrap up.
I'm a little bit confused with the comments from Councillor Hall where, you know, some of the delegations from a CEO is not always the big issue. So, you know, and where do we define that? Where do we define a big issue for a CEO to have the delegation to a small issue? So that's just my question and concern.
Well, I'm not going to get into debate on that particular item that Councillor Mildren had mentioned, but the fact is we delegate just everything we can delegate. We delegate off to our CEO and to our staff. I would ideally like the whole of the delegations to come back, but the motion put forward was with the CEO, and I think that's a good start. I think you say it will bog down council, but you know, I don't think it would. I think it, you know, even if it did create a little bit more work, I think that's an expectation that the community would have of us, is to play a part in some of that decision process. Delegating it off is not being playing a part in that area where I think we should be playing a part.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Hopefully that answered your question, Councillor Watson. Councillor Quilty, in closing to your motion, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for the debate. I would like to emphasise again that I have deliberately limited my motion to the delegations from council to the CEO. I thank Councillor Mildren for his comments, and I personally would love the opportunity to review all the delegations, but I understand what a humongous body of work it would be, and as Councillor Watson has pointed out correctly, it will it may slow us down or create a bit more work, which is not unwelcome, but we do have a few busy months ahead of us with the budget, new councillor coming, the CEO hopefully, so hence the 6 months, which will hopefully give us some room to breathe. And I think it is, I have limited my motion to the most essential to the delegations to the CEO, which is only a small part, but a very important part of this instrument. I believe that a committee of that kind would be very beneficial for us to understand what we are delegating, to whom we are delegating it, what we are allowing the CEO to delegate to the staff, and where we keep responsibilities to ourselves as elected representatives. I don't think that the way I have presented this motion is a big ask. I think it's a very beneficial and very responsible step on our part as community representatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Quilty. Now, councillors, before I put the motion, I just want to really try to recap clearly so everybody knows what they're voting on. And I'm going to try to do my best with someone else's handwriting in front of me. Thank you, Governance Officer Scully. So essentially, it's as per the recommendation, because anybody who has an agenda in front of them is pretty extensive words, so I'm not going to read that out. But essentially, there is a point 5, a part 5 added to that. A committee of the whole council is established to review, sorry, I'm trying to make the most of the writing, to review the instruments of delegation of the CEO and report back to the CEO within 6 months. Sorry, to the council. Thank you. Thank you, Governance Officer. S5 and S7. S5 and S7.
That will be captured.
Captured in that, councillors.
So the S5 delegation captures everything that the council has And that includes things that are in the S7 and also the S6. So you have to, there's no small job, I guess that's what I'm saying. It's a review of the instruments of delegation, because the sub-delegation only exists once the council has determined what delegations it's retaining. So that's so a review of the council's delegations to the CEO is not just a review of a document that's called the S5. It's a review of the delegations that are captured across the S5 and the S6 and the S7 instruments.
Thank you to our Governance Officer, Kevin Scully. So I'm going to put the motion in a moment, councillors, and if you thought the rating differentials was confusing, anybody that hasn't looked at it before, get through your instruments of delegation to see exactly what we're talking about. Councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? That was a tie. So therefore I'll use the Mayor's casting vote to defeat that motion. And councillors, I'll look for a motion. As per recommendation, Councillor Watson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
I think with the discussion we've had, there's no further need to comment on the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer, reserving your right. Councillors, any further? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson in closing.
That we put the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. I therefore put the motion as per the recommendation. All those in favour? All those against? Tied vote again, so I'll use the casting vote of the Mayor to carry the motion. On to item 8.4. We do have a conflict of interest with Councillor Mildren. Did you want to state the conflict? Thank you, Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a general conflict of interest in relation to this matter because one of the officers being authorised happens to be a former staff member of my business.
We'll give you a moment to leave the room. So, councillors, as Councillor Mildren leaves, just a reminder, 8.4 is the appointment of authorised officers. There is a recommendation nice and early in the piece of 8.4 for you. Would somebody like to move Councillor Simpfendorfer as per recommendation? Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Quilty. I think your hand might have beat Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Yeah, fairly straightforward there in the recommendation and explanatory words in there as to the as to the recommendation, the powers that are required under the legislation. So it's fairly unremarkable and administrative, I would think. So I'll move it and support it.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Nothing to add. Any other debate, councillors? No. Therefore, Councillor Simpfendorfer in closing. Nothing. Put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll get Councillor Mildren back in the room for item 8.5. Thank you, Councillor Mildren, for returning. Item 8.5 is the Sport and Recreation Victoria World Games Facilities Fund 2022-2023. Councillors, you will recognise this as something we've had in front of us before where we were unsuccessful with the previous application, so we'll try that again. Would somebody like to put forward a motion? Councillor Simpfendorfer, as per recommendation. Got a seconder? Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Yeah, as you alluded to, Mr Mayor, previously has gone in but deemed unsuccessful for the 21-22 round of applications. So I think this report highlights that it's a resubmission, it's a strengthened application that would be a great outcome for our community with the growth of soccer and the sport and rec plan for the next multiple years, and trying to dip into that 2022-23 World Game Facilities Fund, I think is a really positive outcome for us, and hopefully we can do that one step better this time with the application.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
Mr Mayor, it's pleasing to see that if successful, we've got some money that will be budgeted for it of $80,000 to go towards it. So let's hope we get the grant up so that we get better assets in our city for sporting and particularly soccer, excuse me.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors. No. In closing, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Okay. Councillors therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.6, the discontinuation and sale of Road 1/P S4127801Q. Councillors, there is a recommendation, but we've had some observations late this afternoon. I believe, Councillor Mildren, have you got the finalised words in front of you? I know that our governance officer was feverishly bashing them out 5 minutes to 6, so have you got them there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move essentially what's in the recommendation plus two changes. In item 1 in the recommendation, after the words property owners, I'm moving that we add, subject to the land in the discontinued road being consolidated with the purchaser's adjoining lot, and that the purchaser, in addition to the purchase price, pay all costs associated with the road discontinuance, survey and land consolidation, and that a further point 5 be added, that the land, that in the event that the road is discontinued, the land be sold for 3 Turner Court, Wodonga at $44,000 and the land at the rear of 4 Turner Court, Wodonga at $37,000. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. A couple of pickups there just in the wording, and actually saves a bit of red tape, as we've spoken about this evening, where it wouldn't have to bring the officers, bring us back to that a second time once the discontinuation's been completed, I believe. Is that right, Acting CEO? Or Director Schultz? It sort of saves a bit of a step that we'd have to otherwise go through. Do you want to explain a bit more about that?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, it probably saves a step in if the roads are discontinued, then bringing a report back to the council to seek a council resolution to sell the land. I think we just got to be careful that the public notice that goes out is council intends selling the land, and that we'll follow the local government 2020 process. If there are submissions against that, that comes back to council. In the event that there are no submissions, it comes back to council in any event. So there will be at least one more report that comes back to council. That will do verify the outcomes of both processes.
So essentially the wording's correct, so I can look for a seconder on that one. So if we got a seconder, thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An observation that may well be made by others is that the prices that we've quoted in the motion may seem a little lower than market rates in some regard, and to some points that's correct. They are less than what the market rates might be ordinarily for a block of land in an industrial estate in Wodonga. And this was certainly queried, and the valuers acknowledged it, and the valuers have made some judgments as to why this needs to be the case. Some of those judgments include the fact that there are vegetation on the land, and that vegetation will need approvals processes if they want to remove it, etc., which adds inconveniences and cost to it. There is a easement that runs across the back of the existing lots, which would be potentially, depending on what the use of the extra land might be, could potentially be an impediment to the actual full value use of the land. And the other thing is the land is at the rear of the lots and is not conducive to frontage and high value aspects of a normal block of land that you might get that has road frontage and so on. There's a number of other things that, perhaps of lesser import that can attach to that are the reasons why the price is a bit lower. Having said all that, this is a piece of road reserve that is basically never going to be needed as a road, and the two alternatives that presented would have been to annex it and combine it with the reserve that runs across the back of the land, or to sell it to the neighbours. There's not a lot of other opportunities, and that's another impact on the market value of the land. There's not too many people who'd want to buy it anyway. So discontinuance of the road is sensible. A portion of this road was sold off to another larger land holder a little bit along the road, so the road doesn't have continuity through to a end point. It just stops where it abuts that piece of land where the road's previously been discontinued. Now, because the road's been the previously discontinued road was formed part of the lot of that industrial premises, it makes good sense that this part of the closed road becomes part of the blocks as well for, orderly and proper planning processes and design layouts. So from that point of view, although some might argue we should be looking to get a higher price, I think the price we're getting is reasonable, or the price that we've attached is reasonable. And should this proceed to conclusion with the discontinuance through the processes of public notice and the local government processes, then I think it's a reasonable outcome. And I think that's what we should be seeking to achieve, is a reasonable outcome for both the ratepayers and the landholders that are involved in this process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Hall?
Look, I think Councillor Mildren's explained it exceptionally well, and all the concerns that I've had regarding, maybe the cost was a bit low, but there's reasons behind that. It was done, evaluations were done, and they've taken all of those issues into account, and I think it's probably, it's a good outcome for everyone all around. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Councillors? No? Anything else in closing, Councillor Mildren? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 8.7, the Baranduda Fields Sports Fields Construction. The councillors all had the chance to do a site tour last week, which was wonderful. Thank you, Acting CEO, to you and your team for getting us out there for one of our briefings, because it's great to see where it's up to, because for some it's been probably a long time since they've walked the paddock, which is no longer really a paddock. So there is a recommendation early in our report. Councillors, somebody got a motion? Councillor Watson. As per recommendation, thank you. Have we got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
Mr. Mayor, you've probably stolen some of my thunder. Our visit last week was very enlightening. It's fantastic to see how much has actually come out of the ground, and I look forward to more coming out again. But this guarantees, if this motion is successful, is to finish off another part of the build process. So, we need the money to do this great project, which will take probably 20 years, Mr. Mayor, but it's the start. And thanks to all the staff that have been working on the project and that tour last week.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer. Reserve the right, councillors. No. Councillor Simpfendorfer is reserved. No. Oh,
surprisingly, yes. Look, the reasoning behind this recommendation is quite clear, and whilst it's not ideal with the significant increases that we've heard about previously, I think in managing this issue, it affords the outcomes that we've committed to our city for better service and completing the project that we committed to way back when. The taking ownership of this is responsible, it's fiscal, so we don't have any delays of the process, is really, really smart and I think visionary to achieve what we want out of Baranduda Fields. So, again, I'll take the opportunity to remind everyone that is listening and taking a real close interest in Baranduda Fields, that this is funding from the federal government and Wodonga Council. There's some gaps there that we'd like to see filled, but 10 million from the feds, 10 million from us. We don't want to see it delayed. We don't want to see unnecessary delays, and that will come back to us. So this recommendation, I think, supports that. If it is unsuccessful, we're physically there to complete Baranduda Fields as quickly and as efficiently as we can to manage the growth of our city and sport in that area. So I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson, in closing.
Put the motion, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, put the motion on 8.7. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.8, I believe we've got another conflict of interest, Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Surprise, surprise, I have a conflict in this because I'm a board member at the Wodonga Senior Secondary College, not because I've had a past involvement with the brass band, which I did, but that was a good number of years ago. But I'm currently a board member at Wodonga Senior Secondary College and the band are proposing to relocate there. The money will be spent partly to assist in that, so thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. A fairly self-explanatory one, that one. 8.8, the relocation of Wodonga Brass Band. Councillors, a recommendation there around the funding. I'll take Councillor Watson as the mover, Hall as the seconder, if you're happy with that. Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and I acknowledge that Lindsay Hatch's in the room, who's very involved with the band and is a great contributor to our city, and also has been a citizen of the year nomination. But to get to the point, Mr Mayor, is this is a fantastic opportunity, I think, to relocate a band to community. We spend a lot of money on sport and rec, but sometimes when it comes down to our arts and culture, we sometimes lack a little bit. And I think this is a great way of showing our commitment to the arts of our city, but also helping our youth and helping our band mix and mingle with both students and other. And I think they can be probably great mentors to our students and to our youth of our city. And we might have a bigger and better brass band after this. But I think it's a fantastic outcome if it is able to be voted on tonight. But the second thing is to finish off our in a future budget, our road construction there for our inner and outer ring roads. I think it'd be a fantastic thing for our cities. And it's just been that little bit of a stumbling block for a little while, but I think we're nearly there if successful tonight, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Hall.
Yep, I agree. Our Wodonga Brass Band has become an icon at some of our biggest and most prominent Wodonga events. We love and appreciate what they give to our community. They needed a new home. They've needed a new home for some time, and due to the bad state of the existing band hall, there was an urgent need to find the brass band a new home. The relocation of the brass band to Wodonga Senior Secondary School is an agreed outcome by all stakeholders involved, and will provide a new home that is suitable for the brass band going forward. So that's a great outcome, and it's just about working. And thankfully, Wodonga Senior Secondary College have come forward and helped out with that. Our brass band needs some help from council financially to assist the support of their relocation. And is necessary to address several modifications needed to the Wodonga Senior Secondary School's Performing Arts Centre to where the brass band will be moving to. I support the recommendation in this report. The brass band has provided us with so much entertainment over the years, and I think supporting them in this move is just giving back what they've given to our community.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Councillors. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Councillor Hall said it all, but and Councillor Watson, of course, but Councillor Hall has actually used the words I was going to about Wodonga Brass Band being the gem of our city. We as council use this gem a lot to our advantage to help entertain people at Christmas events and other important events in our city. And I think we should be grateful to Wodonga Brass Band for making our daily life and our holidays more fun. And the band definitely deserves a nice home. I hope that this arrangement is to their satisfaction. I hope that this is the place where they'll be able to not just to keep their staff and come and spend some good time and play some lovely music, but also to grow and to attract more participants. And while I'm the tight councillor, I believe I have no grudges voting for allocating this 80,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Problems with it. Super quick. I'll support the recommendation. I think it's for all those involved in getting to this point, congratulations. It has been time coming, but look, the Wodonga Citizens Band, something we should be really proud of as a city, and having heard them numerous times over the years, but more recently in the last week, I think at an Anzac dinner over at the entertainment centre, or over at the commercial club, sorry, and then looking forward to again on Anzac Day. I'm sure we'll see their absolute skills and dedication to what we can provide as a city is fantastic. So congratulations to all those involved, and I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson in closing.
Mr Mayor, may the flugelhorn and the trumpet play out loud and proud if successful with this motion. I wish you luck if we move.
Trombone. Is there a position for someone playing the triangle? Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We'll wait for Councillor Mildren to re-enter the room. The band is now rehearsing for their new location. Thanks, councillors. Councillor 8.9, the Coyles Road deviation. There is a recommendation there for us. Once again, obviously, this is heading out to public, and just as a bit of an introductory, I guess, for those that may not have read the report, it's cleaning up what's happening on the land versus what's on the piece of paper. We've had a few of these over our time so far, councillors. Does somebody want to move a motion? As per recommendation, I'll take Simpfendorfer Hall as seconder. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Mr Mayor, it's as per the report, it's tidying up a bit of that's inconsistent, and I'll be supporting the recommendation as is.
Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Yes, I think has this been at council before? Yeah, it has come to council before. And look, you have a look at if you have a look at the report and the photos and the diagram, it certainly needs work. So I think it just makes sense to formalise what's been put forward. It has to go out for community notice. So if there's any issues with it, I'm sure people will come and put a submission forward. But I think basically it really makes sense to work with those deviations and fix up what looks like should have been done a long time ago, but we've gotten around to doing it now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When you look at the map and you look at where the road physically is and where the road reserve is, the variation is quite significant. These sort of things are not big issues until you get development and until you get higher traffic volumes and you get more people in the area. And when you have roads that are physical roads that traverse private property to access other properties, and you've got volumes of traffic using it as if it were a public road, then the potential liabilities and impacts and things that happen if incidents occur or all sorts of things can be generated from it, that can be a significant impact on so many different parts in people's private lives, on issues of council, on just so many different things. So it's really important that when we identify these sorts of things in areas where we've got growing population, we've got increasing traffic volumes, then it's beholding upon us to identify them and fix them as soon as we can practically do it. I think we're probably timely, shall we say. This one's been hanging around for a bit and it's very timely that we get it sorted. In fact, if you look at the actual maps, part of the road reserve looks to run along a bit of a creek. You couldn't even build a road in a creek like that with any sense these days because the environmental constraints and things would just make it impossible. So this is fixing up an issue that we should be fixing up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillors, if not, I'll go to Councillor Simpfendorfer in closing. Nothing further. I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.10, folks, I have a conflict of interest of a general nature. Essentially, one of the applicants in there, referred to as the Albury Wodonga Creatives, through my day job, through my employer, they're quite often project partners. So whilst not the case on this particular funding application, it is one that I deem to be a conflict of general nature. So I'll leave, and Councillor Simpfendorfer, you now become chair. If you'd like, I'll give you the debate sheet on the way past.
Thank you. I can't resist the Elvis has left the building comment, but thank you, everyone. 8.10, there is a recommendation, I think on page 506, that's on my page, but it might be on 502, they're playing off the old one. Any, 506, it is 506, yeah. Anyone to move that?
I would like to move a different one.
A different motion? Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to move to separate each application and consider and debate each separately.
Governance officer? It's possible. Okay. Anyone? Yes. Move a motion. That's your, to move that motion. We need a seconder for that. Anyone? Councillor Mildren? Okay. Councillor Quilty?
Thank you. I'll try to be as brief as possible. While we have a lot of worthy applicants and the process of deciding whether we afford the grants and how much is pretty comprehensive, I have my own views on community grants. I believe the council is custodian of ratepayers' money, and awarding grants should not be one of council's roles. However, a lot of applicants are the ones who we as council actually get benefits from, not to take away from the other applicants. They're all worthy. However, I think rather than, I personally feel rather than saying council should not award grants full stop, I would like the opportunity to consider and debate each applicant separately really quickly instead of voting for the lot. Thank you.
Councillor Mildren?
Reserve, Mr. Mayor.
Around the floor. Councillor Watson?
Mr. Acting Mayor, I'll have to vote strongly against this. We have a process in place with procedures. It is for groups, and there are some that haven't been approved. It is all detailed and recorded very clearly, so we know what we're voting on as a block, and I'll be voting against this amendment.
Councillor Hall, yeah.
I actually support it because I think it gives some councillors that may not support all of them an opportunity to support at least some that they think are worthy of the grant money. So giving councillors that opportunity, I think, is important, and so I'll be supporting that motion.
Okay, I'll enter very briefly if I can, but I tend to think that this is coming from a pool of money. Is that correct, Secretary CEO? I just find it might be dangerous precedent to be going down that rabbit hole, but I don't think I'll be supporting it. I think I trust in the panel that has come to this point, and it's a pool of money, there's reasons clearly articulated in all of them. That's my stance on it. But just to follow on from that, does that mean our mayor has only one conflict? Is he coming back for the lot, or are we leaving him out for the entire process? Sorry.
Because it's one pool of money, we're suggesting that he stays out for the lot, yeah.
That makes sense. So in relation to the motion put by Councillor Quilty, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, that's 3-2 in favour of. So from here, we'll need to go to discuss. You need to move a motion each and every time. Okay. I'll take everyone to then. Someone might want to let Mr. Mayor, he's going to be out a little bit longer than he probably anticipated. Go and make yourself a brew. Yep, Councillor Mildred.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I think the fact that it's a pool of money shouldn't impact on the mayor participating in those deliberations that don't have an organisation that he has declared a conflict with. I think he ought to be entitled to come back into the room in respect to those things other than the one that he's
Mr.
move that we suspend standing orders for the...
Have a seconder for that? Yep. Just suspend any orders? All those in favour? All those against? Yep. Thank you. Sorry, for those that are listening at home, playing at home, we've got the issue here that the motion's put to look at each of these community impact grants individually. The Mayor did declare a conflict, a general conflict in that, and the question was put, does he need to remain out for the entire lot, considering it's a pool of money? And his decision, as per the result from the governance officer, is he'll remain out of the room for that process. So then we move to the going through the list at page of 507. Yep. So, Councillor Coody, you're looking to move as per that report or as per that chart, or alternative?
Am I moving all of them? Now I move, each one? Oh, you do it.
Thanks, Kelly. What I'll ask is the process for each of these individually. I'll ask for a mover and a second on each individual one. So sorry to put you on the spot there, Councillor Quilty, but do I have a mover in relation to the Aubrey District Historical Society? Councillor Watson, a seconder. Councillor Mildred, Councillor Watson.
Mr. Mayor, if you read the panel's notes, it is capturing the history of Wodonga and highlights the history of the railway line extension. So I think it's a positive thing, which basically comes down to cultural tourism, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mildred.
That's because you haven't got the centre one, I think. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I don't think I have anything further to add than what Councillor Watson's added to it on this one.
Any other councillors wishing to speak? No, I'll put the motion in relation to that. I guess we'll call it. Do I need to call each individual one as in 8 point? You've got it? Okay. All those in favour? Unanimously. Thank you. On to the next item, Albury Wodonga Creatives on page 509. Anyone willing to put that motion? Councillor Watson, seconder. Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson.
Once again, the panel notes explains it very clearly. It's another thing that's going to help our gallery and our community with creative arts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hall, I believe.
I'm not going to go into because we've got a few to get through, but I like the fact that it does focus on kids under 12. There's, you know, that I think it's a great program for the younger ones. So yeah.
Any other councillors wishing to speak for or against? I'll put the motion for Wodonga Creatives. All those in favour? All those against? That motion is passed. Moving on to, sorry, my glasses, Maureen Cuskelly and the Rotary Club of Bellbridge. Anyone willing to move that motion, sorry?
I'm happy to move.
Councillor Watson, a seconder. Anyone? I'll second that for the purpose of debate. That's from myself. Councillor Watson.
I'm a bit like a robot, but I am going to take you all back to the panel notes, and that's why we've had this panel to put all this together. But this is very supportive application for eating of vulnerable people in our community, and I think it's a great project. And it'll be run out of the Fell Timber Community Centre. Reading this report.
And I'll reserve my right to the end. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this? Councillor Mildren?
Mr. Mayor, I wish to speak against this one not because it's not a worthy activity and so on. I just don't think it's something the council should be funding. I don't think ratepayers pay their rates for this as a service in their payment of rates. Even though some people now regard rates as a tax, rates are not a tax yet. They may well become that one day, but at the present moment, rates are a payment for service and the services that council delivers. And I don't believe this is something that we should be putting in that service delivery. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Acting Mayor.
Any other comments or debate? No, myself, I reserve the right. I tend to not go on too much more from my previous comment when this came up to pass in this manner, that I'll support the panel's process. I did support the budget in relation to the impact grant, so I trust in the process of the panel, and I'll be supporting this motion for the funding. In that case then, Councillor Watson to wrap up. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. Motion is defeated. The next one, Murray Conservatorium, on page 512. Anyone to move that motion? Councillor Watson, a seconder. Councillor Mildren. Councillor Watson.
Once again, Mr. Mayor, it's the panel's comments, but also it's once again some music and the Murray Conservatorium in Albury. I think it's a good thing to grow our community and particularly in the field of the arts. So once again, a good thing for our community, and we're only partially funding it, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These sorts of projects that are delivered across Albury Wodonga by conservatoriums of this nature are intrinsically within the bailiwick of our arts portfolios that fall into the responsibilities of council. And when these are structured and clearly of involvement in the community in this nature, then I think we should be supporting them. Not dissimilar to other organisations that do similar things that we support within our community. I think the position of funding partially in this nature is probably a good outcome, and I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Quilty or Hall, anything further to add?
Thank you. I will just reiterate, I said it all in my previous motion, and I will just reiterate, I think all the applicants are absolutely worthy, and particularly on that one, I'm a great music lover, and so are the members of my family. However, it is due to my belief in how the ratepayers' money should be spent that I make my decision on these funds. And due to this belief, I will not be supporting this one. Thank you.
Thank you. With nothing further to add on that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? That Murray Conservatorium is passed. Thank you. Moving on to Friends of Willow Park Inc. on page 514. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mildren, a seconder. Councillor Hall, Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The nature of these type activities are betterment of council owned or controlled or land of interest to council in terms of our public parks and so on. And this is a group of volunteers who do a lot of, an enormous amount of good work in relation to, in this case, Willow Park. And I think it's a council asset where we're allocating money for the improvement and betterment of a council asset, and in that it's well within the council bailiwick and within the terms of what the council should be using ratepayers' money for. So that's the reason why I support this one, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I agree. I like the Friends of, we've got quite a few, this particular one's Friends of Willow Park, but you know, they have these, this one I think it's like a speakers come and talk and inform local people who want to come along and get informed on different issues, especially environmental issues, and I think it's a good thing. I'm not, you know, I'm pretty careful with money, but I think that these Friends of Willow Parks and Friends of, which we've got other groups, are a really vital asset to our community, and I think we should support them. So yes, I support this one.
Councillor Hall, Councillor Watson or Quilty, anything further to add? Councillor Quilty.
Thank you. On this one, I will agree with Councillor Mildren in saying that this group of people are helping us with their valuable work on the council asset. So I believe it is the work that needs to be supported, as in otherwise council would be doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? There's none. No, we'll pass that unanimously, sorry. That is passed unanimously. On to Albury Wodonga Aboriginal Health Service on page 515. Anyone to move that recommendation? Councillor Mildren.
In the context of this, I move that the last three items not be supported.
So, Councillor Mildren, you want to? Okay. Anyone to second that motion? Councillor Watson? Sorry, firstly, Councillor Mildren. Yep, Councillor Quilty. Just your mic, mate. Oh.
Councillor Mildren, when you say not supported, the recommendation is not what the grant. Are you, when you're not supporting it, is it your suggestion that we do award the grant, or we support that we do not award the grant?
Mr Deputy Mayor, I'm suggesting that we not support the application as per the the report, sorry.
Yep, thanks for clearing that up. So in regards to the Wodonga Aboriginal Health Service, the recommendation there on 515 is not to support that impact grant. That's the motion. Councillor Mildren has moved that, and that's seconded by Councillor Watson at this stage, I assume for debate. Councillor Mildren first.
I think the reasons are outlined in there in the documentation, which are fairly close to the mark. And secondly, in my opinion, whilst these are very strong and very good organisations within our community, they're not organisations and activities that are necessarily something that council should be contributing funding towards. It's more of a federal and or state government issue rather than council issue. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Watson.
Mr Acting Mayor, I just refer everyone to the panel notes again, and I encourage the staff to get back to AWOS to discuss where their application might have been lacking a little bit. A very important part of our community, and they do need supporting, so hopefully they will be talking with our staff, and that and a further new fresh application will be put forward, Mr Mayor. Mr Acting.
Anything further from the floor? Councillor Hall or Quilty? No? Therefore I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. So the Albury-Wodonga Regional, I moved on. The Albury-Wodonga Aboriginal Health Service application has not passed. Moving on to the Albury-Wodonga Regional Food Share application. Again, this one is not recommended by the panel. Do I have a mover of that motion as per the report? Councillor Mildren, anyone seconding it? Councillor Quilty, I saw first. Councillor Mildren. Okay, I'll take it there's nothing else from the floor to say. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. The Albury-Wodonga Regional Food Share application impact grant has not been approved. The Myeloma Australia, I think we're the last one here, yes. Again, similar to the last, the report or the chart there is not supporting that impact grant. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Quilty, a seconder. Councillor Hall, I think just snuck in. Councillor Quilty.
I believe we have, like I said, the worthiness of the applicants is not to be taken away. However, I support, as per the report, that we do not award this grant.
Councillor Hall.
I support the recommendation that it not be supported, but there were notes in the panel that the panel encourages the applicant to undertake further work to demonstrate the projects in line with the grant guidelines. So they've given, if they come back with another application that meets the guidelines, there's a possibility that it could get approved.
Thank you. Anything, Councillor Mildren?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. These projects are all very good and admirable projects in their own right, and some of them are really important things to have in our region, but they're health services, and health services are essentially to be funded by state and federal governments. This sort of thing, we can't allow cost shifting for this sort of thing to be continuously happening to local government. As much as we support and we should be advocating and doing the necessary things to advocate for these sorts of services, we can't be just allowing these things to be drifting across into our bailiwick all the time. It's not something that we can sustain. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anything further for the debate? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. The Myeloma Australia impact grant has not been successful. At this point, we're moving on to 8.11, and I think that re-enters our mayor.
All right, item 8.11, the Community Impact Partnership Program for February 2022. There is a recommendation for you, councillors. Anyone prepared to move a motion? Councillor Simpfendorfer, as per recommendation, is it? Have I got a seconder? Councillor Hall, thank you very much. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
As per the recommendation there, Mr Mayor, I think it's gone through the process in the partnership panel as per their recommendations that are to be read. I think it's quite self-explanatory there, and I'll be supporting that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, there's only one item here, and I support the recommendation from the panel put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors? No. In closing, Simpfendorfer? No. I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 8.12, the Community Infrastructure Grants. Again, recommendation there for you and your panel report. Councillors, somebody like to move a motion? Councillor Watson, as per recommendation, is it? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
Mr Mayor, once again, as I early comments tonight, is that it's gone through a rigorous process with our staff and evaluating each recommendation, or each application. So I'm very happy the way that the expenditure will be going out as we've budgeted for it. It's been a budget process which we've done in the last budget period, so more than happy for it to go forward, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer. Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I've said probably every year when these things have come up, I see this by and large as a fund to support community organisations that either use and occupy or support and enhance our assets and our reserves and our infrastructure. I note that there's one in this document that might be argued falls a little bit astray from that, but the Barngilla Hall is something that may not be directly owned by council, but it's an asset to our community that we should be protecting and trying to keep in a maintained position. And I think the Ewart Brothers Park, I think we can all see the benefits of doing infrastructure works in parks that are reserves held by council. So even though I think probably the first one might be a little bit off the target for council-owned infrastructure, I think, or council-required infrastructure, I think I'll support this on the basis that it generally meets the view that I have in regard to supporting council infrastructure.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Any other councillors? Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to point out that I have given careful consideration to each and every one of them. As much as I like to break things up and discuss separately, I thought that it would be petty in this case. Infrastructure partnerships are very important for the council. Some applicants hit the target stronger than the others. However, as Councillor Mildren said, enhancing community assets, using community assets, and pointing out any issues with community assets is valuable work to us, council, and a great help to us. Therefore, I don't see issues in funding it from ratepayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Simpfendorfer in closing. Nothing further. I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Items 9, there's two of them, the reports for noting councillors. 9.1 is around the extraordinary vacancy. Obviously reporting there on the resignation of now former councillor Kat Bennett. Councillors, the recommendations there, would someone like to move a motion that reports received and noted? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hall. Does anyone wish to speak against? No? I will plan to have some comments on Kat Bennett's contribution to the community when we get to some general business a little later on. Item 9.2 is relating the Municipal Monitor. Councillors, again, report's pretty self-explanatory. Just confirming there's been no further correspondence with Council Acting CEO, with yourself or myself since the initial letter, which the public's all seen, and you've all got there in front of you once again. Again, it's for noting, really. So have we got somebody to move? Thank you. Simpfendorfer, seconder Hall. Anybody wish to speak against? Carried unanimously. Into reports for information, councillors. 10.1, the planning report. As always, please pull me up if you have a question or you need to make a comment on any of these. So the planning report for March 2022. 10.2 is the building report for March. The 10.3 is the competitive services report for March. 10.4 is the audit and risk committee meeting summary of the minutes. 10.5 is the council plan quarterly progress report. 10.6 is the virtual council meetings and up. Yes, Councillor Watson.
Mr Mayor, I think with the virtual council meetings, it's a really positive thing for our community and for our society, because it doesn't matter where we can contribute to a council meeting or to council. So really important step forward if that continues.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. 10.7 is the record of councillor meetings. 10.8 is the decisions register. Item 11, notices of motion, there's none. Petitions at item 12, there's none. 13, council seal, nil. General business, councillors. Now, please give me a moment while I get my thoughts together on this, because I have got a couple of things I've thought of as the night's progressed. I'll start with the budget preparation, because that has been a highlight, I think, through you, Acting CEO, to Narelle and her team, because I know she's had the COVID isolations and some other interruptions as well at a pretty pivotal time of year in her team. And the, I guess, community feedback, which I've received personally in the lead up to the dollars and cents sort of campaign that we did quite proactively with deliberative engagement in the community. I think that was very well received. I'd hope that that's been successful enough for us to consider doing that again in future budgets. The workshops held to date have been very beneficial, I think, for all councillors, and they've been satisfied with how that's happened. And we look forward to bringing the community on for the next step from next month once the draft budget is finalised by your team. So thank you very much for what you've done there. The men's shed deserves a big congratulations. Since we last met, they've won Shed of the Year out of all men's shed organisations throughout Australia. So they're pretty excited, and quite a few of their members didn't get to make the awards night that was held locally. We have a big celebration planned for them, of which I'll be representing councillors at in the coming weeks for those that weren't able to attend the awards, because they're all pretty proud and they do play a very valuable role in our community. Speaking of that, one that I just noted quickly is the Volunteer of the Year Awards. They're currently open for us, and they will close on the 29th of April, I believe it is. Jump on the council website if you know somebody who does go above and beyond time and time again. There's a few categories there for members of the community to nominate volunteers. So please, we know there's lots of people that have done even more than traditionally they usually have. We'd love to see plenty of nominations. Something that warmed the heart a little bit on the Easter weekend was the Good Friday appeal, a tradition I'm sure for many people to have a look at the tally board, particularly for regional tallies. I checked it again this afternoon to see if there'd been any updates for the City of Wodonga around the $100,000 mark towards the Royal Children's Hospital. And we all know, if we haven't ourselves had a child there, we all do know somebody who's had someone there. A highlight I want to point out is if we're only, I think it was $40 odd off $100,000, so it was $99,900 and something for the City of Wodonga. To give you a comparison, Geelong, who has around 4.5 times our population, only raised $105,000. So they only beat us by about $4 or $5 grand, and they've got almost 5 times as many residents in what is an extension of Melbourne, and much closer to that facility than what Wodonga is. So I think it's one that we should congratulate our emergency services and our services groups, the Rotaries and Lions and all the rest that were very proactive throughout the public holiday and what would traditionally be a break for many people in their families to do such a good effort and really put us on the map. And by the way, we beat Albury. Yes, that's it, the people who gave the money. So the other thing I just wanted to bring up in general business before I go around the room to you all, and I didn't want it to be overshadowed by our reports for noting, but we have lost Kat Bennett as a councillor in recent weeks, and I guess I just sort of thought I'd take a moment to reflect upon her contribution without it being overshadowed by other events, of which are quite public at the moment, because I would have to say many people in this room, in fact the entire community, have probably known Kat much better than I do. I've only had the privilege of personally meeting Kat through this council term, and obviously having to work with her throughout moments of time. So not a great deal of time spent together in comparison to others that may be sitting in the room with me. What I can say though, is that as the Mayor of the city, I have observed prior to becoming a councillor myself, Kat's contributions to the community, but as you do get around the community, the amount of people that have actually said to me how wonderfully she's performed her role in the past, the preparedness, and I'm sure you've all witnessed this, the preparedness to help find advice, to point people in the right direction and really get a better understanding of how the Wodonga Council does operate and also help impact each and every one of our residents. So I'd like to reflect on that being a loss because that is a skill set in itself. But on behalf of the community and also Wodonga City Council, I do thank Kat for her contributions, and I know that we all wish her very well for the future. So I've rattled off a fair few general business there, but I'm happy to see if any other councillors had more to add. I think I've picked up most of them though, but Councillor Watson?
Mr Mayor, I did say this afternoon I didn't have any, but I think it'd go remiss without me adding another comment about Councillor Kat Bennett. I think she's a fantastic role model for our young women and leaders in our community. I'm sure this is not the end of her career, either state, federal, or back into local government. But Kat, if you're listening, you're a loss to our team here. And thanks for your contribution over the 6 years. It's been fantastic. Very well read with her agendas and her meeting procedures. Are just a fantastic role model for us all.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Any other Councillor Simpfendorfer?
Yeah, I'll just mention that as well. You highlighted, Mr Mayor, I guess the community sentiment to Councillor Bennett and as Deputy Mayor. To be remiss of me not to probably put a personal touch on this as well, to thank her publicly for coming on as a new councillor and trying to get your head around processes and procedures, and her professionalism, her tenacity, her skill sets, and how she's revered across the community was quite clear throughout the election time, let alone everything I've witnessed her do from afar leading in, and was certainly part of my decision-making stand for council is seeing what she's done for the community over that time. So, Kat, thanks for everything that you've done for our community, and I wish you and your family every success, which I'm sure you will, whether that be personally or professionally, and you will be sorely missed. Your smiling face and everything you bring to the table will be dearly missed, but we wish you all the very best for you and your family.
Thanks, Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I'd just like to wish Kat all the best for her future endeavours. Look, I know it's not easy as a young woman, and especially now as a new mother, you know, working and finding time to put into, you know, the time that she used to put in when she was not a mother. And I get that because I've been down that track before, being a grandmother now and putting my hand up and helping out my daughter who's of similar age. So I understand all the ins and outs of being a mother and trying to keep a job and, you know, do the things that you did before you were a mother. So I appreciate the fact that she has represented the young people of Wodonga extremely well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. That being all the general... Oh, sorry, Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's two things. One, also a big thank you to Kat for what she delivered to the council. I saw Kat as being one of the most passionate contributors in the organisation. Whilst we probably didn't agree on a lot of things, I will support her right every time to say what she did and have the things that she supported and was very passionate about. I think that's something that's probably been lacking in local government in recent years, that people don't come into local government with the same level of passion, and I think that's it's going to be missed in the organisation. The second point, in relation to the budget process that we've had, I have felt that this budget process with the community consultation, the way we've gone about it at the start, the way we've gone through the whole process, the way, particularly congratulations to the acting CEO in the way she's conducted and run the various briefings and workshops that we've had in relation to the budget, and particularly to Narelle's team, who have actually done things pretty much on demand, which is quite difficult when you're modelling stuff and doing all that sort of thing. this budget process that we've just been through is probably the best budget process for a whole range of reasons in the whole time that I've been on council. So it's a credit to the staff and it's a credit to the council team. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you very much. I would like to join Councillor Mildren in thanking, first of all, the members of the community who participated and gave us their feedback regarding the budget. And I encourage more members of the community to do that as the years progress. Your feedback is valuable and has been thoroughly considered. And it's a great encouragement for us all to see community participating and telling us how you would like us to spend your money. So thanks for that. Keep up the good work. And I would like to thank the staff, our acting CEO, Deb Madra, and Narelle and her team in supporting us, particularly for myself. As much as I like to be involved with the budget, I had a few issues outside my council role which prevented me from attending a couple of workshops personally. However, Narelle and her Officer Klein and her team, have supported me extensively and informed me extensively and made it absolutely possible and comfortable for me to participate online via MS Teams. And I think a lot of our concerns, all our concerns have been given consideration. A lot of them have been addressed properly and to our satisfaction. This is my second budget process, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope we only improve going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Quilty. We'll move on to urgent business, of which there's none. Question time at item 16. Now, I'll start because we have had a question, councillors, from Mr. Phil Day from Wodonga. Wrote a question essentially based on global warming and a few observations, and we'll make a copy of this available on our website and the response given herein. But the question essentially, in short, was when is the City of Wodonga going to declare a climate emergency? Considering this was actually discussed by our councillor group as recently as the 11th of April in one of our briefings when organising response to some email inquiries, we recognise that whilst every councillor has a view on this important topic, there is no proposal to declare a climate emergency at this time in the City of Wodonga, and Wodonga Council's climate plans and policies, which are available for the public to research and read, does confirm our commitment to achieving real outcomes for the community. Again, that will be supplied as a response in formality on the website for all to see. Acting CEO, I believe you've got one.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have a question from Kate Sleeman. So Kate has asked, the regional deal was announced in March 2022 to great fanfare. City of Wodonga, as part of this deal, will spend $6.1 million on logic infrastructure. What exactly is this spending for? Is it tied to the expansion of Wodonga TAFE Training Centre or the Inland Rail? When will Council have the funds to expend? And who in our Council negotiated or agreed to this spending? So thank you, Kate, for your question. All financial commitments made through the regional deal needed to be approved through a Council resolution or through Council's approved budget process. The $6.1 million investment in logic infrastructure was formally approved by the Council at the August 16, 2021 Council meeting under confidential business. It was also incorporated into Council's operating budget. This investment is required to ensure logic continues to be investment ready for current and future development. The investment will see an extension to Roche Drive, the construction of Lenahan Avenue entry, and the construction of stormwater retardation basin at Logic. These works are currently out to tender, with the funds expected to be expended over 2 financial years of 21-22 and 22-23. The funds to meet this commitment is a combination of grants, land sales and council funds. So thank you, Kate, and we will send a formal response to you in the next coming days. Thank you.
additional one, whilst not included in the agenda as the question time, as Councillor Quilty identified earlier in the night, and we did have Mike Fraser reach out to us just with some questions around a couple of budgetary requirements. It is extensive, so what I'm going to suggest, if it's okay, Acting CEO, is we incorporate that formal response, obviously, as well in the same process that we usually would. Thank you very much. Item 17 is confidential business, so recommendation there as usual to close the council meeting. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer, and a seconder, Councillor Watson. Anybody wish to speak against? No, we'll close the meeting. Councillors, we need to adopt in-camera items. Recommendation that be done. Have we got a mover? Councillor Hall, Councillor Watson has seconded. Do we have anyone wishing to speak against? No, therefore that's carried unanimously, and that closes our meeting for this evening. Next meeting's on Monday, May 19th at 6 p.m. See you then. Thank you.